We go from Gordon County line to Dawson County line. We go from the Gilmer County line down to the Cherokee County line. We've got roughly 330 miles of water line, and that's scattered out. So, we've got a lot of coverage for 6 or 8 employees that, man the operation side of the work.
Hey there, I'm Graham Parker, and you're listening to the Around Pickens podcast. I've had water on the brain lately. I actually have it on my brain all the time, and so do you for that matter. Something like 50 to 60% of you is water. It's in almost everything you eat and pretty much everything you drink. Some communities get their drinking water from the ground, others from a river. But here in Pickens County, neither of those are really an option. We're actually unique in the fact that we not only lack a natural body of water, but we also don't have a reservoir to draw from. That is a pretty complex issue. It has been hotly debated going back to when we first installed water infrastructure in these parts. I'm not about to give you an opinion on it. What I do want to do, though, is explore how the government is able to continue supplying water in spite of this obstacle. And the man here to tell us about that is Phillip Dean, Pickens County's Utilities Director. Phillip has been with the Water Department for nearly as long as I've been alive and has had no shortage of obstacles to overcome. Today we're going to talk about some of those, along with some changes coming to his office and a big project that is going to affect a lot of our departments. Seriously, you're going to want to hear about that. So let's head over and hear what Phillip has to say about keeping the water flowing.
So, Phillip, I appreciate you coming on the show this afternoon. I've kind of wanted to interview you for a while now. You're probably the most animated department head we've got at those work session meetings.
I appreciate you having me. I try to, lighten things up and lighten the mood up, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely needed at those.
Yeah.
But I always like to start these things out just by asking people about their background. So you're our utilities director.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about the arc of your career. How'd you end up here?
So let's go back to 95. I started my career with Cherokee County Water. Worked with them roughly 4.5 years. And we moved to Talking Rock, and it was just a long drive. And so I come to work with Pickens March 19th of 1999. So this March will be 25 years. 25 years. Yep. So altogether, I've got 29 and a half years with water.
Man, it's a lot of experience.
Yeah. A lot of headaches, too, at times.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to confess, I'm not one of your customers. I don't totally understand everything you do. Can you walk me through what services you offer and where in the county you offer them?
Yeah, we all we offer is water. We don't offer sewer. The city of Jasper does offer sewer. The city, we've got 2 water service delivery areas. The city of Jasper's got one, and Pickens County's got one. The city naturally would be your core of Pickens County. We're on the outskirts of city. We go from Gordon County line to Dawson County line. We go from the Gilmer County line down to the Cherokee County line. We've got roughly 330 miles of water line, and that's scattered out. The city, of course, they're confined to one area, or not one area, but, if you look at it in a circle, the city's in that circle. And so we're on the outskirts of the city, and so we go further out and we're more so scattered than the city is.
Wow.
So, we've got a lot of coverage for 6 or 8 employees that, man the operation side of the work.
So you've just got 6 employees to handle all that?
Actually, now we've got 9, but back about 2 months ago, we only had 6, yes. So we're back up to 9. We need one more to be fully staffed in the field, been fully staffed in the office, on the administration side for quite some time, but it's been a task trying to get the crews filled on the operations side of it.
When it comes to operations, my understanding is that your department's a little unique because you don't necessarily rely on taxpayer funds as much as it is revenue from your services.
Correct. And a lot of folks don't realize that, and I get it because we work for Pickens County, but we don't receive tax funds. We work off our revenue. And I say our revenue, we've got roughly 3,900 customers, and that's where we get our revenue from. And so whatever our revenue is for that year, that's what our budget will be for the next year. So we can't increase it more than what our revenue stream is. And so we rely on our customers to, keep operational.
Right. Well, let's talk about the numbers a little bit. I think it's kind of common knowledge that Pickens County is the only county in Georgia where we don't have our own water source, so everything we have is imported. Tell me a bit about that. Where are we getting our water? What are we paying for it, and how does that affect your service rates?
So we've got, I think, 4 point of entries. We've got Calhoun, which is is our biggest that we buy from. They charge us. We pay $264,000 from them. Then we've got Cherokee County, which is our second largest that we purchase from. We pay them $255,000. We buy from Gilmer. I think it's $1.77 a thousand, and Jasper is also $1.77 a thousand. We don't buy quite as much from Gilmer or Jasper as we do from the Calhoun or Cherokee sides. And you want to talk about numbers, we can roll right into, like you said, we don't have our own source of water. Like we're the only county out of 159 counties that does not have a state body of water touching or running through it. So that hurts us. So our next step would be to move forward with a reservoir. But a reservoir could take anywhere from 15 to 20 years once you get that time clock started, because there's so many hoops you have to jump through with the EPD and the EPA, environmental studies and so forth. And you may get 5 years into the project and something comes up and the EPA says, nope, you're done. You can't move further with this. But on the treatment side of it, if you was to treat water and you did have a source, it would cost you roughly $5 to $7 a thousand to treat that water. So we can buy treated water for half that on average. So yeah, we would like to have our own source, but it's more beneficial to us to purchase water versus, having to treat it. And I know a lot of folks, well, they can cut you off whenever they want. No, there's a written agreement, and the EPD will not allow another municipality just to turn you off just because. Now, if their system goes down and they're out, that's one thing. But they just can't come up and cut us off, hey, we don't want to supply you no more. We have a written agreement. It's usually 5 to 10 years.
Well, the decision-making on that seems very complicated, a lot of factors to consider and weigh. But I know when it comes to the decision-making, you're not the only guy making the decisions. You work with the BOC and the Water Authority Board.
Correct.
How do you all work together?
We, as you said, the BOC is who I answer to. But the Water Authority does have a Water Authority Advisory Board. It's made up of 5 members, and we do have a chairman. And so if there's some projects come down the line that they want to see, they'll make a recommendation, and they'll send it to the BOC, and then the BOC will, talk about it, discuss it, if we, what's the need of it or whatnot, and then they'll vote on it. They're great to work with. They work well together, and they may disagree, but at the end of the day, they know what needs to be done, and they work well together. And in our BOC, they're always behind us. If we have something come up, we need it, they're there. It's the same way with our board. If we need something or need a policy or a procedure updated or amended, we'll present it to them, and then they'll vote on it to either amend that or not, and I respect every decision they make. But they listen to us, and if we need to change something, we have to present it as why we need it, not just because we want to.
Sure. Well, how often does the board meet?
We meet the third Tuesday of every month at 6:00 in room 140 or suite 149.
Gotcha. Let me ask you, since your revenue is sort of fixed based upon your customer base, how do you plan out your projects year to year? What all goes into that?
It's tough because we, accounting for projects, we also have to account for maintenance and our infrastructure that we have now going down. So we look by, I did a 5-year capital improvement project 2 years ago, and we've done a couple of those little projects. They were small. the bigger projects, we have to look further out for them because, they may cost multi-million dollar projects. So it's hard to plan or budget a project unless it's something that's brought up first of like this year. That way we can plan it for next year, get ready, and figure out how we can pay for it or how we need to restructure our budget for, say, 2025. It's tricky, but it can be done. But we try to wait till our SPLOST funds are built up, and we do have a project come up, then we use our SPLOST funds to cover that project. But it's tricky to plan projects, unlike the roads. I mean, they've got paving every day, or not every day, but every year. So we've got a lot of work that we want to do, but we're trying to schedule it out for the next couple of years, starting on it now.
I got you. So I guess with the projects that you have in mind, they're all kind of varied. There's not like something you're consistently working on.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And again, I'll say our infrastructure, it comes with, everything comes with age. Mechanical parts, moving parts, they're going to wear and tear. So my biggest project is just replacing some infrastructure to prepare us for the next 15 or 20 years. So that's a little costly. So it's going to, take planning now to get it done in the next couple of years. Finding funding if we don't have, the SPLOST funds or we can't raise our budget's not that high. So we have to carefully plan or pick what projects we want to do. And and I keep saying it's tricky, but there's a fine line when we're going to do this project, but when you get ready to start doing it, you don't have the funds, or something else happens, and you have to use those funds for it. So we do a lot of projects on the spot. We need to do this, let's do it. So as far as planning them, no, we just go by the seat.
I got you. Let me pivot a little bit to talk about a policy that's coming to your office in May. For anyone who doesn't know, the county is transitioning to a software that is affecting how departments compile data and also do online billing. And as a result of that, I understand you're switching from 3 billing cycles a month to 1 a month.
Yeah. I'm going to refer to our legacy system quite often, and that is our older software system that we're moving away from. So our current legacy system, we do have 3 billing cycles. But with the new software, we can only have 1. They're working with us until we can get the due date changed. But we can only have 1 cycle, which it's going to be easier, I think, all around. And we build it around, we got a disability billing cycle. So, they get their checks, or their payments certain times of the month. So we're trying to structure it to where everybody's bill, is at the 5th of the month. And that due date fits everybody instead of having 3 due dates, 3 billing cycles, and 3 cutoff dates. It's going to cut out less work for our office, and then that way we can work on, and we get our bills out on time, but sometimes we have delays. And this because 3 billing cycles. And once we have that 1 billing cycle, everything's going to be more consistent, and hopefully the customers will see that. And nobody likes change,
yeah.
Especially after 20 years. And I didn't want to do it. I hesitated about doing it, but it's something that we had to do. But we had to find that happy medium where, these folks, we didn't want nobody to get a late fee or have a late fee because we moved the due date wrong one way or another. So we worked on it for about 5 or 6 months before we actually come up with a date. We will have the same amount of time in between the time the bill's due, or the time you get the bill and the bill's due, it'll be about 10 to 15 days. Then after due date, your late fee will be added, and then you'll still have 15 to 20 days before the cutoff. So we're not cutting nobody's time out. It's just shifting everything back to the 1st of the month And plus our reports that we have to pull monthly and annually for the EPD for audit purposes. So to speak, we have, if we stayed where we was at, we're billing in 2 different months. We're billing for example, half of March and half of April because we read on the 15th and the 15th. So you got 2 months there that we're playing with. This way we'll have a full month and all of our reports will be 100% true versus 90%. So we just want to be accurate on our reports for auditing purposes and plus our state reports, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so what you're saying is right now people are being charged for half of 1 month, half of another, but this will change it to where you're being charged from the 5th to the 5th.
Exactly.
I got you.
Instead of having 15 days in March and 15 days in April, then we're going to have it in that full month instead of half and half.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely say this is a big improvement for accounting purposes. But I know that a lot of the online discourse has been folks concerned about getting a bill late and getting hit with late fees. But you feel that this organization is going to cut out those problems that you've been having?
I think so. I think it will. Once we get it in place, and it may take a couple months, but I think once we get, I'm going to say into June or July, it should, hopefully the number of late fees that we're having will, go down. And I'm hoping it's a benefit to us changing the due date. Like I said, we worked on it for 6 months going back and forth with dates, and we think we found the happy medium date. Nobody's perfect, but, it's something that we had to get done pretty quick once after we went live, and we went live, I think it was the end of January. So we had to come up with a number shortly after we went live. So, I just hate we had to do it and we had to change the date, but it's something that we had to do.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I want to round this out by talking about kind of a big announcement that was made at the last work session. That was a presentation by Lonnie Waters on a mapping project that y'all have been doing for the last year and a half. Tell me about that. What is GIS mapping? What is on this map? And what is the impact of all this?
Okay, so first off, I'm gonna say Lonnie Waters and Richard Garrett done an outstanding job. We brought Lonnie on back November, a year and a half ago, I guess, something like that. And we brought him on for that purpose to create our GIS. And GIS is mapping all of our water lines, all of our meters, fire hydrants, valves, GPS coordinates, and putting it all into a computer system. And that way we can have it on our phones, on our tablets, or on our desktop. It's something that I've been wanting to do for 5+ years now. But it was always, the numbers I got for the cost of it was, to me was astronomical. So when I was talking with Lonnie and he was telling me the program that he was familiar with. And so we talked with them, and it was really reasonable price for what we was getting. And so when we started it, the chairman asked Lonnie, it was jokingly, how long is this going to take? He said, a couple years. So here we are exactly, I think roughly a year after we started it. We started it in the end of February of 23, and they completed it last week, which is the first week of March. And so we've installed the app on the guys' phones and their tablets, and it's going to help them if they're out at night trying to find a valve, and they can just pull it up on their phone. It'll give them the coordinates, and they can find it, within a foot. It's going to help the ladies in the office. A customer calls wanting to know where their meter's at. They can type the address in on that GIS, and it'll pull up that address, and they put the layer for the meters on there, and they can tell them where their meter's at within a foot or two. Another department that's going to help is planning and development. Folks coming in and asking about new developments or, building a single resident structure, wanting to know if water's there. And they can pull it up and say, yeah, we got water here. And then they can send them to us. But we went further than that, or Lonnie did. I didn't have nothing to do with it. I just sat in the background. Lonnie went further with it. So him and Kirk Anderson, the road superintendent, or public works director, I'm sorry, they started wanting to log all of our storm drains and bridges and culverts and paved roads and gravel roads. And so we done all that, and that's all completed. And so we went as far as another step further and GIS all of our fire stations. And then Chief Prather asked him, so, well, can you do this? And so he went in and he GIS'd and mapped from all the fire stations the 5-mile ISO. Not as the crow fly, but every road that branched off of it. And once we turn that layer on, it shows how much the county has covered by each station within that 5-mile ISO radius. It's impressive. There's a lot more that can be done with it, but I think we're where we need to be right now. And I know a couple of things was discussed after the work session the other day, and there may be a few more things coming down the road for that, but we'll get to that when we do it. So I'm excited to have it, and the guys they've done used it this week, so they're really excited to have it.
I was going to ask you, with everything you were adding on top of that original request, it seems like there's just all kinds of potential for it. Do you ever see this as being done, or just something that just keeps building on?
It's definitely going to keep growing. And like, we set meters every day or once a week, and so for every new meter we put in, he's got to go out and log it and then upload it. And so I think what they're going to do with the company is right now they've set it to where we're going to do an update once a week. Once he goes out and collects data, and then he's going to come back and upload it, then they'll update it once a week. And if we don't need to update it once a week, we won't. If we need to update it more, we will. But it's going to be real time, and I say real time because it's within a week. And so with everything that we do, new lines, new fire station, new culverts being put in, whatever it be that where we already got it on that GIS, he will go out, mark it, map it, bring it back in, upload it, and it'll be on there within a week. And so it's impressive. It is something else.
Well, it's exciting stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Phillip Dean is Pickens County's Utilities Director. Phillip, thanks for coming on the show this afternoon. I
appreciate it, Graham. It was a pleasure being on here and sharing and hopefully educating some of the customers and the citizens on, how we operate or, why we do things and whatnot. So I appreciate you having me.
Definitely.
I think about what Phillip had to say there. Nobody likes change, especially after 20 years. I think that we're often adverse to change because it's disruptive. We have a routine that works for us, and we don't want to break that routine. But sometimes, even when change can be difficult, it can be for the better, and this is just one of those times. Listen, I don't know how big of a change this billing cycle is going to be in your life, but what I do know is that we have a very good office staff. They're going to do everything they can to make that smoother. If you have concerns or things you don't understand about all this, give them a call or come by the office and talk to them. They know that this won't be easy, but they're going to do everything they can to make it easier. And beyond that, remember, the Water Department is on Facebook and has a page on our website, pickensga.com. Check those out for more detailed information and to keep up to date on all the latest updates. Thanks again to Phillip for taking some time to break all this down for us, and thanks to his staff for everything they do in the office and out in the field. With that, though, we are going to turn now to our question to the chairman, the part of the show where you, the viewer, gets to ask a question to Kris Stancil. So let's head on over and hear what listeners wanted to know.
Kris, appreciate you coming in as always, answer a few questions. I know that last month we had probably your favorite subject, which is paving roads, but now we have your second favorite subject, which is about zoning. So the email we got a couple of days ago says, hey, I saw in the paper where the commission voted to make it easier for downzoning from higher density use to lower density. Can you explain a bit about what that practically means for applicants to skip approval from the Planning Commission and have lower fees? I'm all for keeping Pickens low density, but feel a little leery about creating exceptions. In short, what do you hope to achieve from this policy change, and how will it work practically? So, yeah, Kris, I think it was pretty to the point.
No, I think it's a great question. It's one of those things that's hard to cover in one newspaper article. So with just trying to cover the highlights, what we actually voted to do was to amend the section of our ordinances that cover zoning, which is in Chapter 67. And in that amendment, one, we had to make sure we were fully compliant with state law. And the state law has certain requirements for any rezone to take place whatsoever. So any type of zoning does require ultimate approval from the Board of Commissioners. which has always been the case, but it also requires certain steps. There's a public hearing that's necessary and several other things. Well, prior to this change, all of those things had to go through a first step public hearing before the Planning Commission, and then the second step coming to the Board of Commissioners in order to have an approval process. We had a lot of cases just in the last year, for instance, where people had purchased property that the zoning didn't match what was physically on the property. So when they went to get a mortgage for the house, for instance, if it was highway business zoned, they couldn't get the mortgage without going through and having that property rezoned to an appropriate residential zoning that would allow it. And so it would stall the process for a long time because of the way that the guidelines were in place. There had to be a certain amount of days between the Planning Commission's public hearing and then the next available meeting for it to be voted on. So what we essentially were doing was just trying to find a fast track process for these simple down zone type environments. And that works whether it's going from highway business to residential or from residential to agricultural. And there's, a handful of variations of how that would play out. But we were trying to make it easier on the applicant to be able to come in, file their application, do the appropriate advertisement for a public hearing, but then have the public hearing directly in front of the Board of Commissioners during the same meeting that they could follow up and vote on at a later period of time. So it shortens that process by 45 to 60 days. And then because there's not as many steps that are required, eliminating the fee that was for the rezoning fee, it would reduce the fee. Actually, there's still a sign that has to be put out and an ad that has to be placed in the paper, so that fee would become minimal just to cover those particular expenditures, but allow it to move through the process a whole lot faster. So if you owned let's say you owned your house and you went and bought 2 acres next to your house and they weren't zoned the same, but you wanted them to stay at the lower intense zoning, you would then be able to go combine those parcels, get them zoned appropriately, without having to jump through as many hoops to try to make it more practical. This is not something to impact big developments or developers or things that typically require upzoning to move property from agricultural to rural residential or to whatever category it is. Those will still go through the same processes, and will go before the Planning Commission for a public hearing and then come later to the Board of Commissioners to allow more time. But I've yet to see a case where there were opposition voices at a public hearing for somebody that was down zoning. Those show up on the up zone because of the impact it has on their area. So that was the biggest part of trying to amend the ordinance, is not to create exceptions. It's just to create a process for down zoning that's a little bit different than the process for just a standard rezone in general, and to make sure it's 100% compliant with state law. So we amended a couple of things in the timing of when things had to take place and the appeals process, those type things. We made sure our ordinance was compliant with the state law that took place in 23. So we got up to speed on that. We also created just the language within our ordinance that most counties around us have used for years and years, and it wasn't prohibited by our ordinance, but it wasn't specifically included in our ordinance, that allows commissioners to have conversations and to kind of work through that zoning process. That if somebody is applying for a rezone and they're asking for a more intense residential versus, an example might be that their plan is to build 3-acre lots, but they're trying to rezone it to rural residential, which is 1.5 acres. Well, then we would have the ability to, by the time it came for a vote, to be able to vote for that other intensity district that matches the plan, that kind of meets some form of a compromise, but doesn't set up the county for future significant changes to that parcel of property, and so that it can maintain compliance with our comprehensive plan and with all else that's going on. So those 2 factors were in place, and then the third was that any Board of Commissioners has initiated rezone. By law, the Board of Commissioners has the ability to initiate a rezone process on a parcel of property. We just never had it clearly defined in our ordinance as to where that would be heard So it established that also would be a public hearing before the Board of Commissioners if they're the ones that initiated a process. I can't think of an example where that's been done. I know since my tenure began, 3.5 years ago, we've not ever have one of those cases come up, but they could. And so we wanted to make sure that the language was there that provided the guidelines as to how that would be done if it were to take place. So that kind of gives a little bit more detail into what was changed in the language. I know it's been sent to Municode, is the kind of the statewide software system that updates what shows up on our website under our ordinances, but under Chapter 67, you'll be able to see those changes. It has been provided to them. I don't know their turnaround time before it goes live, but when you click the ordinance link on the county's page, there's an area at the top that shows recent changes, so you can click on it there as soon as it goes live. Or reach out and contact me if you need a copy. We'll send a copy of the amended version in the meantime while we're waiting on that to actually get placed online.
Yeah, I got you. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like very little has actually changed about the process. It's just making it a little bit simpler for folks that are developing the property in a way that has less impact on the community.
Yeah. I think the less impact, I mean, that's a good summary. Anytime someone's going to the less intense district of zoning, meaning that there's less density that would take place on a property, we wanted to make that process easier for them. So that's the goal.
Okay. I got you. Well, Kris, thank you for that answer. And remember, if you have a question for Kris, you can email us at questions@pickenscountyga.gov, where if your question is concise enough and appropriate enough, we might just put it on the air. But that'll wrap up this episode of the Around Pickens podcast. I'm Graham Parker.
And I'm Kris Stancil.
And we'll see you around.